Hi, welcome to Understanding How to Navigate Your Life Using Human Design and Astrology. I'm Sasha Clark, your guide tonight, and I'm going to pause the video for a second. You won't notice this, but I'm going to let a few people into the room. This is a live event that I'm recording, and then we will get started in just a moment. So I'm going to pause the recording, and we'll be back shortly. All right, so tonight's chat is called How to Navigate Your Life Using Human Design and Astrology. This works out okay. Oh, yay, it's working. Perfect. And for those of you that are on my email list, you probably remember a story I told a few weeks ago about how a couple summers ago I um, learned to sail at a camp up in northern Wisconsin. And I have been on a sailboat several times before, but I had never really learned how to, be the captain of the ship, if you will. And it wasn't a ship like this. It was a lot smaller. It was a little catamaran, but we spent barely 10 minutes on the shore getting our lesson. And then she's like, well, let's just get on the boat. And I'm like, don't you have more to teach us? And she said, no, the water is the best teacher. And that's kind of what I found. Maybe it's because I'm a 6'2". That's what I found about experimenting and working with the energy of human design and astrology is that sometimes you just have to get on the boat, which is our life, and work with the energy. The wind in your sails and the water is really the best teacher. Just learning to glide through it and feel your way through it. This metaphor is pretty profound. I won't go into it too much more tonight, but like I said, all of you know me as Sasha. I'm a 6'2" mental projector, Leo Sun, Leo rising, Virgo moon, which keeps me organized, and I live in Iowa with my husband and three boys. Three of my husband and two of the boys are generators, and then my youngest son is a projector, and we have a daughter also, but she doesn't live with us anymore, and she's also a generator. So lots of experience with one of the questions I have is about protecting projector energy. So I'm a lot of experience with that. I'm excited to answer that question for you. If you're new or newer to human design, human design is basically a system of understanding energy. It's built on four ancient tools: astrology, I Ching, the chakras, and Kabbalah, Jewish Kabbalah. And honestly, out in the internet, I feel like the Kabbalistic insights into the human design is a little underplayed. Maybe just because Jewish people tend to protect their source material. So I'm going to share a little bit of that tonight, because it's just not that it's not easily found on the internet. Um, so astrology kind of sets our cosmic timing. Our I Ching then defines the gates and the traits in the human design. The chakras influence the energy centers, the actual head center, ajna, and so forth. But Kabbalah is like the electricity flowing through the chart. So if I compare human design with basically electricity, that all of these systems are the conduit around the energy, but the Kabbalah is really explaining more of the actual electricity that's going through the conduit. So you are a conduit for light and energy. And one of my favorite sayings is, where there's a design, there must be a designer. Because that always reminds me that even as much as I study the vehicle and the driver, which is the soul, I'd like to remind myself that there's a source to all this too. And that I find that a lot of human design practitioners sometimes forget to, reconnect the soul to source, and that's really important. So this is an overlay of the Kabbalistic Sephirot over a human design chart, just to kind of give you a visual relationship. I don't know if you can see my cursor, so I'm going to describe what I'm talking about in terms of color also. At the top, you see the Keter or crown, which is basically is a connection point. It's not really over the top of your head. It's more like if you were to imagine yourself three-dimensionally, it would be kind of like the umbilical cord where your soul is interfacing with eternal life and light, whatever you define that as, God, source, universal love, whatever. I prefer to call it the Ein Sof, which means the all that is nothing, or the all that isn't nothing, because because in my understanding, whatever we define source as, we're automatically limiting it as to what it is not. Therefore, if it's love, it's anything, it can't be anything that's not love. So I try not to container my understanding of like ultimate source. It's a little beyond my ability to comprehend actually in this particular plane we live in. The other nine, there's the other colors and circles represent different prisms through which that pure light is sent into this world. Um, so if you imagine that you were in the bottom of a well and for some reason you're stuck in there and it's really dark, it's so dark you can't even see your hand in front of your face. And then someone hears you and leans over the edge of the well with a flashlight, you know, those ones that are like replicate sunlight, and shines it at you and says, "Hey, are you okay?" It would be almost painfully blinding because your eyes aren't used to that light. We live in the world called Malkut, which is this world of manifestation down at the bottom that's represented by the black circle. In the individual sense, Malkut is also connected to our root center, what grounds us to the earth, right? But in the Sephirot is also where God is grounded to us. And so in this particular world, this emanation, we are in a mixture of light and dark. And so here, one of our jobs is to separate or sort out light from darkness and to bring light into darker places. But part of the reason we're in a world of mixture is because our spiritual eyes here are not fully developed, right? That's why we're here. And so we're learning to see things. And because our eyes, it's kind of like sitting under a shade tree, you know, and being still, you can kind of look at the sun a little bit better when you're in the shade, under the shade tree, or you have sunglasses on, because we don't want to hurt our spiritual eyes by staring directly at the pure light. So God, in mercifully, actually puts these cloaks on, or these emanations, these different ways of expressing his or herself in the world as wisdom or as understanding, like the red dot, or as knowledge, the gray dot in the middle. Well, each of these emanations also, because what's above is also below, these emanations also correspond with different soul struggles that we will have while we're in this world of mixture. And our job is to bring them in, all of these centers, into balance inside of our own human design, our own vehicle that we reside in. So the vehicle is our body and the different neutrino activations that happen at the moment of our birth and 80 days before our birth. The driver, though, is our soul, and our soul comes here with a curriculum of its own and an agenda, if you will, set partially by the time and location and season in which we were born, which we'll talk about more in the astrology section, but also set somewhat by past lives, if you will, or incarnations. I don't believe in complete incarnation as a Jewish person, but there's a fragment of my soul that has definitely been in other incarnations before. And when I believe deja vu is like a recollection of something that you've experienced before. But anyway, that's in right. Okay, so the point of contact that you really need to know is that this is, again, where this umbilical cord is at, where beyond our experience in this body, in time and space, there's a piece of us that is eternal, that is interfacing with an eternal being at all times. And that piece of us, a lot of people in meditation spaces call that the higher self. That's the piece that we're trying to connect to when we're meditating, or when we're praying, or when we're having an awe-inspiring experience in nature. Is this it's a part of us that gets through the thickness of our flesh, our density in this 3D world, and reminds us that we're four-dimensional and that there's something more than just this experience. I had a relative pass away recently, and my 10-minute talk at her celebration of life was all about that dash, that end dash that's in between two dates, that is such a little tiny piece of English, you know, but it is also like profound, and how we choose to spend that's our vehicle. That's our sailboat on the water. The water is time and space in this particular plane, and we are riding in this vehicle, the sailboat, and the water is life is our best teacher. So in Jewish Kabbalah, let's move on to the next slide. Astrology is nothing more than a calendar. It's basically, knowing the transits can help us prepare, like grabbing an umbrella on a rainy day, or putting sunscreen on when the UV index is too high. And and it's just a kind of it's an energetic weather pattern. And one of my favorite ways to use human design and astrology is by tracking the new moon. So it's one of my favorite timing tools. In Kabbalah, the new moon, which is called Rosh Chodesh, marks the beginning of each month. And an ancient text called the Sefer, which is book in Hebrew, Yetzirah, which believe means the foundation, so like a foundational book, describes all the constellations as channels or prisms that filter God's pure white light. And so each month has a different constellation that presides over it, that kind of filters the energy coming into this world. And so it's a little like if you're at a dance party and someone finally puts on some slow music, it kind of changes the mood of the room. That's a little what these constellations do to the collective. It kind of just changes the soundtrack that we're all working on. So as you probably already know, this Saturday, we will be coming into the month of Virgo, which is called the month of Elul in the Hebrew calendar. And the month of Virgo is on its shadow side, like a lower vibration, is it kind of an anxious, over-organized, somewhat critical, fixing kind of like rearranging kind of energy. But on a higher side, and this is kind of where my Gene Keys training comes into, like there's really a spectrum of each of these energies. So when I say you have gate whatever in your chart, you might be experiencing that on a low vibration or a neutralish vibration or a high vibration. And our soul curriculum is to try to move most of our energy to the high vibration during our end dash, during our existence here on Earth. So, but anyway, the shadow side of Virgo can be kind of critical and anxious. The higher side is really invested in self-care. It's also invested in making room and space for everyone to get their needs met. That's part of that organization spot. Making sure things are in the right place, boundaries are where they should be. So this month, you may find yourself, depending on which house Virgo is activating for you, you may find yourself being called by circumstances to tidy that area of your life up a little bit, or make it, maybe if exercise is something that is that's being activated for you right now, you may feel, like I should really just put this on my calendar so it happens. That's a real Virgo way of handling it. So if you haven't already, I want you to go ahead and go to my website, sashyaclark.com/free human design chart. And I want you to make sure that you have your rising sign and what house it falls in. Like I said, in the Kabbalah, the Virgo month is called Elul, and that stands for, it's an acronym that stands for I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. So again, you have kind of this feeling of this intimate, like what's happening, rather than this king who's like the creator being this king who's so far away and inaccessible, and we have to really struggle to like reach this king and ask for help. You have to get an appointment, you have to wait 6 months for your appointment to come up, and then you have to have permission to come in the throne room, right? And it's just kind of a difficult metaphor for us Americans since we don't have a king. But that's a lot. You have to go through a lot to get audience with royalty, right? And in the month of Elul, the sages teach that the king is in the field. So now, instead of you having to go to the king comes to you in your field, in your place of influence, where your body lives, where your family lives, where your business is at, and everything is being accounted for at the moment. The king goes to the field once a year to look over everything in the kingdom, and then the point is that there's this place where you can just ask for whatever it is that you need. That's the energy we're working with when we come into Virgo. Where do I need support? How am I doing with this? Where am I thriving? Where am I not really making it so much? How are my finances? And then just not even hesitating by just having that conversation. So 11 months of the year, we teach that you pray first and listen second. And in this month, in Elul, which starts on Sunday night in the Jewish calendar, but Saturday night on the NASA calendar. If you want to know why, you can ask me by email. I'll be happy to explain it to you. But anyway, starting this weekend, it'll be reversed, where we will be inclined. it would be to our benefit to meditate first, listen first to the accounting that is coming to us this month, and then pray and ask for whatever we see in that. So I want you to take a minute right now. I hope you brought a pencil and a paper, and I want you to write down quick where your rising sign is. Most of you probably already know that off the top of your head. And then I want you to take a peek at your natal chart. If you don't have it, you can go to my website and grab it quick. And I want you to just jot down what house Virgo lands in for you this in your natal chart. That is the area of the 12 houses that will be highlighted for you this month. So the rising sign is like the front door to your life, and you can keep, take some of your notes, but I'm just going to keep talking here about the rising sign to give you an example as you're working on your own. And then, like I said, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat and we will talk about them later. Your rising sign is like the front door to your life. It's the energy that people tend to feel off of you first before they really even get to know you. It's kind of the outer shell of your aura. And that's why new moon intentions work best when you see it through your rising sign. So in this example, this is one of my children. In this example, the ascending sign is over here in Cancer, which is on the left-hand side of the circle. I drew a more prominent dark line through the middle of the chart so that you could see that, like, this is kind of like where the, where the sun rises, and then it's, comes up for him. Aries would be in his midhaven's midhaven is in Aries. And then so we've got Virgo down here in the more private area of his life in the 5th house. There are whole house systems and other kinds of systems. I won't get into the time to discuss that now, but the majority of Virgo is in the 5th house. So we say his 5th house is activated by Virgo. And so for this person, the 5th house, just lost my place on my notes. Sorry, 1 second. 5th house, yes, is the section of play, inner child work, creativity, romance. And so this person could be asking himself, how can I set a routine or get like space in my life every week to make sure I'm playing and being creative? So this could be something like just adding an appointment with himself to work on his comic book that he's been working on for the last year. Again, this is one of my sons. Or just even taking a walk and going to the park and swinging, like all those inner child things. But the question isn't so much about like, how can I be rigid about it? That's the lower vibration of Virgo, but how can I set a routine around it so I know I have space and time or resources to dedicate to this thing in this house that's important, that's being activated for me this month. So your question will be then, how is Virgo in the month to come affecting my whichever house your Virgo falls in? So what could I put in my calendar, make a routine around, or make space for that will enhance the energy of this house for this month? Just for another quick example, my Virgo personally is in my 4th house of family. So which is so weird because this time of year I always end up, because it's the beginning of the school year and we homeschool, so I always am way more focused on my kids and my organizing my schoolroom and putting away some of the summer stuff that we're not using anymore and just kind of turning over the house for fall. That is something I just instinctively started doing yesterday. We talk about too, I didn't mention this before, but since we're going to be talking about Mercury retrograde next, we have like shadow periods too. So I don't want you to think that just because the new moon isn't until Saturday that we aren't going to start feeling the transition to that. It's not like a point in time. It's something that's happening, actually really across the globe over 24 hours, right? And even so, the planets are so far out that we can begin to feel the energy sometimes a week or two before the event actually starts to happen, especially with retrogrades. So here's a quick picture. You're welcome to take a screenshot, or I can send the slide to you later. This is just basically goes through each of the houses and tells you which planet is native there and what the house governs over. And I have it juxtaposed against the mandala, which we'll talk about a little further in at the end. But this mandala is basically a calendar. If you start up here at gate 41, that's the beginning of the Rave New Year. The gate 41 lands in Aquarius. the dark purple section. And the sun every 6 days or so comes around all the way around. And we are currently in gate 29 over here in the yellow, at the end of the yellow section, because we're at the end of Leo. We'll be crossing over into Virgo at the end of the week in gate 59. So knowing too which constellation is where the gates fall according to which constellation can also give us insight into how that energy lands. And I mean, you could get really complicated and go, well, which planet is activating which gate in my chart, which is really fun to do. It's a little complicated, but it is nice because 70% of our energy is actually our sun, and split between the two suns and the two earth signs. So we don't have to really, the rest of it's all, the squished into the other 30%. So okay, on to Mercury retrograde. Retrograde starts with an RE. So one of the ways, my favorite ways to use a retrograde of any kind, especially Mercury retrograde, is to do things that start with RE. So renew, replenish, revisit, refresh, rewind all my old VCR tapes. Just kidding. But I do, people often say that they have communication issues, they have travel plans get disrupted and slow down. Everything seems to slow down, tech failures. So I have chosen for about 12 years now to, instead of focusing on everything that slows down and goes wrong during Mercury retrograde, to just take my focus off of that and put it on to, like, can I reorganize a closet? Should I, look at my finances? This last Mercury retrograde, I was revisiting our finances, and I found that we were leaking a couple of things, subscription money. It's just money. We were leaking energy into a couple of subscriptions we weren't using anymore. And I was like, oh, we don't do that. So it's really good. That's what the energy is built for. Mercury retrograde is intended to give you a little breathing room from moving forward, so you can kind of look back quick for 3 weeks, about 3 to 5 times a year, and go, okay, what's not working? How do I shore that up quick so I'm not leaking energy and resources into places that are draining me, So I also use the analogy of, like, the reason Mercury retrograde happens this way is because, like, this inner black circle that is closest to the sun, that's Mercury, it is moving so much faster than the blue one, which is Earth. And every once in a while, they'll catch up with each other and they almost seem like they're slowing down. And from our vantage point on the Earth, Mercury appears or feels energetically like it's going backwards. So the analogy that I use is, like, if you were swimming in a circular pool like that, you would get a little current going. And retrograde is like when one of the people helping you swim in a circle suddenly stops and starts adjusting the flow, and you can feel the inertia of all that moving energy slow down and almost go backwards for a bit. Or if you were to turn around and try to walk against it. So that's what's happening when they swirl next to each other. And that happens 3 to 5 times in a calendar year. And it only usually lasts for about 3 weeks. Well, 5 if you include the shadow period before and after, because, like we said, these aren't definitive points in time. The energy creates inertia when it's moving. And so you can't just stop energy moving on a dime like that. So you sometimes can feel the retrograde for a few more days afterwards or a week afterwards. But I don't get too stressed about that. But anyway, Mercury retrograde is often time for spiritual or emotional renewal. A lot of people say that someone from their past might show up and have something to say or something to work out with you, or like an old boyfriend or something. The retrogrades aren't bad. They're just part of the rhythm, and they invite us to rest and reset and pause and go with the flow a little bit instead of trying to push for our will to be done. So, okay. And then my third favorite way to use astrology is when the moon goes void of course, which happens about once a week, but I only really pay attention to it if it's more than a day or more than an hour or two in length. And these are like mini little retrogrades. So if you think about what the moon rules over, the moon is kind of our motivator, well, I say my moon is in Virgo, so I'm really I have a way of this inner motivation to organize things before I try to tackle them. I always clean off my counter before I start cooking, because I can't handle the clutter too much. I might also have to do with having outer vision, but anyway, uh, the moon going void, of course, means that in its 29-day rotation around the earth, it has passed through all the signs and it is transitioning from the last sign to the next sign that it's going into. And so it's just void for a little bit. Sometimes it's only a few minutes, like a half an hour. But today it was void for almost 5 hours. And what that feels like energetically is um, kind of like your aura isn't being pinged very hard. Like it's nothing's stimulating you. It's like if you were at the pool and the sun was out and you're, kind of getting sweaty, and then all of a sudden this big cloud covers up the sky for half an hour, and then that passes and just moves on. It's just kind of this like quiet gray that kind of muffles everything for a little bit. And your motivation might dip a little bit. I literally finished my slides for this presentation about a half an hour ago because I couldn't get motivated this morning because the moon was, I mean, I assume it's because the moon was void, or maybe I was just tired. I'm not sure, but that's what it felt like for me. But it is like a built-in white space. And so I just lower my expectations of myself that day, do a little bit of light work, journal, or I might go take a walk, something out in nature, just getting up away from my computer, away from my creative work, and giving again, going into that listening receptive state instead of talking, asking, pushing, creating, that more masculine energy. It's a way to just lean into my feminine energy. Okay, and then sun transits. That's the last way I use this. Again, like I told you, this is a calendar basically. It starts on gate 41. Just a little plug about New Year's Eve. If you're a person that writes New Year's Eve resolutions, the last couple of transits right before the Rave New Year in the late January when we cross over into Aquarius are pretty difficult for anyone who has an undefined will center. This is actually my chart in the middle on the slide. You see I have a completely open will center. So I don't have the willpower to power through gate 60, which is the gate of contraction, I think. No, the gate of limitations, because every excuse that you can think of to get off of your train of your New Year's Eve, your New Year's resolution will happen in gate 61, 60. And if it hasn't, then the gate of constriction in 41 will also try to throw you off course. And so it's actually best to start setting intentions at the beginning of the year, but really make your plans for after we get into gate 19, because gate 19 is where you now have the new coming forth. So just like a woman who's in, childbirth, 41 has to happen, the constriction, to get the baby out. And then 19 is like the new life that's coming forth. So that's the optimal time to set intentions for your year, not January 1st. January 1st is kind of an arbitrary date based on Julius Caesar, has nothing to do with energy at all. But it's a great time to have a party. Um, so anyway, the sun transits through each one of these gates, like I said, about every 6 days. If you're not already on my email list, I encourage you to get there, because I do send out basically an email every 6 days to help people to just draw awareness to being what gate we're in. We just crossed over into gate 29. And like I said, see, gate 29 is at the end of Leo, and we're about to cross over into Virgo and gate 59 at the end of the week. So again, grabbing your pencil and your paper, I want you to go to if you go to my homepage, www.sashyclark.com. I don't think I can put that in. Oh, maybe I can type that in the chat while I'm still talking. And write down, if you scroll down on the homepage, you'll see that my blog for gate 29. I'm going to pause the video for a second, and I want to give you a few minutes to just read through that blog and ask yourself, just observe. The first pass through the blog is for you to just observe the energy of the gate. I try to touch on the gene keys, the Kabbalah, how it ties into the current astrology, and then of course the I Ching. There's beautiful stories in the Chinese I Ching about the energy that help kind of give a visualization of what that energy represents. And so I want you to just take a minute to kind of read through that and just observe. The two questions you're asking yourself is, what do you notice while you're reading through it? What sticks out to you? Maybe there's a word that kind of feels like it's jumping off the screen. What do you notice? And then what makes you wonder? Like, what are you wondering more about that you might want to dig into a little deeper? Those are kind of your X marks the spot for things that you can meditate or pray into during this transit that will help. So I want you just to take a few minutes to read through that and write down your observations. Keep writing. I'm going to give you the second question, which is the question, is this energy mine? So again, you might need to pull up your human design chart, which you can do right there on my website if you want to. If it's already in your chart, of course, the 6 days may feel consistent with your energy. You may not notice it at all. So in my chart, gate 29 is not activated but at birth. So I will feel a difference in the way that this is activated in my sacral system, in the sacral part of my body. However, I don't have the hanging gate 46, so it won't be as profound. So I might notice it, but if I had the hanging gate 46, I would definitely notice it, because once a hanging gate connects to a transit, what will happen is then both centers on either side of that channel become activated for 6 days. So uh, you don't need to write this down, but but I want to make sure it gets on the recording that the ways I harness this energy intentionally is that I will go through at the beginning of every Rave New Year, and I will write down in my calendar where gate 17 on the Ajna creates a gate 17, 11, because that finishes those two channels there. Gate 7 on the G center, gate 1 on the G center, and gate 16 on the throat center. When those transits are active for those 6 days apiece, I have a defined throat. So that's when I will go redo my website copy, start a new email series, anything, record a podcast, anything that requires accessing that throat energy consistently in order, like a bigger project that might take 3 to 6 days to do, I will use that throat energy that I can borrow from the transit during that season. It is still my throat, my voice, but it's consistent. Whereas when I'm outside of those transits, I have to kind of wait till I'm inspired a little bit, or until I'm answering a question that I know someone in my community, my audience has. Then people with an undefined throat, they're kind of like guitar amps, whatever everybody else is thinking in the room, they'll usually raise their hand and ask the question that's ever on everyone else's mind. That was definitely my story as a child. I was always the one going, well, we don't understand the assignment, Mr. Smith, you know. And then my friends would always be like, how did you know that was what I was thinking? Like, I don't know. It's like I can almost hear what they're thinking, and it comes through my throat and out my mouth, shoots out my mouth sometimes. So um, so yeah, you'll want to pay close attention anywhere you have hanging gates to what your opposite gates are too, and kind of map that out for you in your calendar, because that will activate those particular centers for that 6 days. It isn't fortune telling; it's a calendar. It's predictable, about as predictable as sunrise and sunset if you follow that at all. So it's just another way of aligning your activity with natural rhythms. So, and I want to say this for any of the more Christian leaning members of the audience. It's important to me to tell you that astrology in its raw form is a calendar. It's not fortune casting. Yes, there are auspicious times to do certain things and say certain things or not do certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any outcome is guaranteed. A fortune tellers say on such and such date or in the future you will. And part of the reason Jewish Kabbalah and astrology weren't designed to do that is because, first of all, it takes away free will. Then we get into this fatalistic, like, you have to do or behave a certain way because of this transit, and that's not really fair to humankind. Also, our choices affect the outcome, but furthermore, the outcome is really up to, in my belief system, up to God. I do the action steps, but the outcome, the results are really up to God. And I am just using the times and the seasons to try to align myself as well as I can with whatever the next step in front of me is. And part of that as a projector has been learning to wait to be invited to help instead of, all getting myself all scattered with getting involved in too many things. So in summary, those are the 4 tools I use to navigate oh, I forgot I had put some stars on here. So to show you that the current transit is, I'm borrowing gate 29. I forgot I had that set in here. So again, those are the tools I use. If you want to use some of these tools with me, you're welcome to email me to get on my email list, and I would be happy to send you also the transits every 6 days. I'm already doing it for hundreds of other people. You're welcome to join us. I do also post on my Instagram uh, an alert when we've crossed into a new gate, a new sun transit. And then my text message thread is really fun. Once a week, I send out a text message with kind of a weekly forecast. It's hard to cram it a whole week into one text message, but we do pretty good. And if you want to be on that text message, you're welcome to pull your phone out right now and type in 530-444-4412, and that will text my business cell phone number, and I will get you on the text list so that you too can get your weekly forecasts. Again, I'm Sasha. I am your spiritual guide in tonight's video, and I'm really glad you're here. One more thing that you might want to put on your radar, actually, let me stop the recording and the share for a second. Thank you.